"Run!" shouted the gardener when my daughter invited me to visit her in Chicago, and I knocked on the door and saw that no one answered. I thought he was crazy. But this is a setup, and the police are already on their way. In 30 minutes, handcuffs. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The phone rang just as I finished washing my dinner plate. Grace's name lit up the screen, and I stared at it for 3 full rings before answering. Nearly a year of silence, and now this. "Dad?" Her voice came through sweet as honey, too sweet. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I dried my hands on the dish towel, buying myself a second to think. "Grace, this is unexpected. I know. I've been terrible about staying in touch." She paused, and I could almost see her arranging her face into an expression of contrition. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I realized how awful I've been. Especially after Mom." The mention of my wife hit exactly where she intended. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the last light fade from my backyard through the window. "It's been almost a year." "Exactly. Too long." Her voice shifted, becoming almost eager. "That's why I'm calling. Craig and I would love to have you visit. Come to Chicago, stay with us for a few days. Let us make it up to you." Every alarm bell I possessed started ringing. Grace didn't do reconciliation. She did transactions. "That's generous," I said carefully. "Please, Dad. It would mean so much to me, to both of us." She rushed on before I could respond. "We have plenty of space here in our home. You could see where we live, meet some of our friends. I want you to be part of our lives again." Our home. She emphasized it strangely, like she was marking territory. "When were you thinking?" I asked. "Whenever works for you. Next week, we're flexible." Too flexible, too accommodating. This wasn't my daughter talking. This was someone following a script. "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," I said. "Of course. Just don't wait too long, okay? I really miss you, Dad." After we hung up, I sat in my recliner for a solid 20 minutes, phone still in my hand. The living room felt too quiet, the way it had since Sarah died. But even in the silence, I could hear something wrong in Grace's voice, false notes in every word. The memory came without warning. Standing at Sarah's graveside, watching the casket lower into the earth. Grace had worn a designer dress, black but expensive, checking her phone 3 times during the service. Afterward, while other mourners offered condolences, she'd pulled me aside. "Dad, we need to talk about practical matters." Her eyes had been dry, calculating. "Have you updated your will recently? What happens to the house?" I'd been too shocked to respond properly. My wife wasn't even in the ground an hour, and Grace wanted to discuss my estate. Craig had stood behind her, arms crossed, radiating impatience. He'd barely acknowledged me all day. "Grace, this isn't the time," I'd managed. "I'm just trying to help you think ahead. You're alone now. You need to plan." She'd left right after that, kissing my cheek with cool lips, promising to call soon. She never did. Not once in 11 months. Until tonight. I stood and walked to the mantel where family photos sat in neat rows. Young Grace, maybe 10 years old, grinning with missing front teeth. Teenage Grace at her high school graduation, proud and bright. Grace at 25, bringing Craig home for the first time, and already something in her eyes had changed. The Grace who called me tonight wanted something. The question was what? I opened my laptop and searched for bus tickets to Chicago. Flying would be faster, but I'd learned frugality building houses for 40 years. Money saved was money kept. Besides, a bus gave me time to think, to prepare. If Grace was running some kind of game, I needed to understand the rules. The ticket confirmation printed, I sat back and considered my options. Every instinct screamed trap. But I'd spent my career calculating risks, measuring loads, ensuring foundations held firm. You don't walk away from structural problems. You face them, assess them, fix them. Grace had transformed slowly over the years, so gradually I'd barely noticed until the change was complete. Marriage to Craig had accelerated it. First came the requests for money, just temporary loans that never got repaid. Then the growing distance, calls becoming monthly, then quarterly, then nothing at all. By the time Sarah got sick, Grace visited out of obligation, not love. Now she wanted me in Chicago, in her home, where she controlled everything. I packed my small suitcase with care, taking only what I needed. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, toiletries, my medications. Everything fit neatly, the way I'd been taught in the Army 50 years ago. Travel light, stay mobile, keep your options open. Standing at my bedroom mirror, I saw what Grace probably saw. An old man, alone, with a house worth nearly $300,000 and enough retirement savings to make me comfortable. An easy mark if you were desperate enough. If you were willing to betray your own father. I zipped the suitcase closed with more force than necessary. Whatever game she was playing, I'd find out. And if my daughter had become someone who would prey on her own father, well, I'd taught her better than that. Maybe it was time she remembered exactly who taught her. The bus ticket sat on my nightstand, departure time circled in red pen. Tomorrow afternoon, I'd board that bus. I'd walk into whatever trap she'd prepared. But I wouldn't walk in blind. 2 days since Grace's call, and I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something obvious. I stood in my garage that afternoon, supposedly looking for my travel umbrella, but really just buying time to think through this situation one more time. The hardware store wasn't on my way to anywhere, but I needed picture-hanging wire, and it gave me an excuse to get out of my own head. I was comparing brands when I heard my name. Hiram Butler? Tom Whitmore hadn't changed much since we'd both retired from Kellerman Engineering 3 years ago. Same white beard, same flannel shirt, same ready smile. Tom, good to see you. We shook hands and exchanged the usual pleasantries. He was remodeling his kitchen. I was keeping busy with small projects. Then he said something that made everything click into place. "Oh, hey, your daughter called me a couple months back. Wanted to ask about you." My hand tightened on the package of wire. "Grace called you?" "Yeah, back in January, I think. Said she was worried about you, wanted to check in." Tom's expression showed he'd thought nothing of it. Asked if you were doing okay financially, if you'd mentioned selling the house, that sort of thing. What exactly did she ask? I kept my voice level, interested but not alarmed. Tom thought back. "Let's see. Whether you were in any financial trouble, if you talked about making any major purchases. She asked specifically if you'd mentioned any health issues that might affect your judgment." He chuckled. "I told her you were sharp as ever, obviously. She seemed very interested in exact numbers, wanted to know if I had any idea what your place was worth." "And you told her?" "I said I didn't know specifics, but property values in your neighborhood were good. Was that okay?" She made it sound like she was just being a concerned daughter. "It's fine, Tom. Thanks for letting me know." We parted ways, but I barely remember driving home. Those weren't the questions of a concerned daughter. Those were the questions of someone doing research, gathering intelligence. But for what purpose? I sat in my truck in my own driveway, engine off, mind racing. Why would Grace need to know my financial situation? Why ask Tom instead of me directly? And why 2 months ago? What had she been planning since January? The pieces formed an ugly picture. Grace needed money. She and Craig lived in Lincoln Park, one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods, in a townhouse they couldn't possibly afford on their salaries. Tom's question suggested she was trying to determine my net worth, my vulnerability, my competence. I could cancel the trip, call her back, make an excuse, stay safe in Columbus. But I'd never run from problems in my life, and I wasn't about to start now. Besides, if Grace was planning something that required knowing my financial position, I needed to know what. And more importantly, I needed to protect myself. The rest of the afternoon moved with purpose. I photographed every important document I owned, property deed showing the house in my name alone, bank statements with careful account numbers visible, my will, last updated 3 years ago, leaving everything to Grace because she was my only child, investment portfolios showing my retirement accounts. Each photo went to my secure cloud storage, backed up twice. If Grace was trying to establish that I was incompetent or vulnerable, I wanted proof of my clarity of mind, documented and dated. The notary's office was quiet that late in the afternoon. Mrs. Patterson had handled my documents for 15 years and asked no unnecessary questions when I requested copies of my will and property documents be kept in her safe. "Just keeping my affairs in order," I told her. "Very sensible, Mr. Butler." I drove to my neighbor's house as the sun started setting. Helen Chen was watering her roses, and she smiled when I approached. "Helen, I'm taking a trip to Chicago tomorrow, visiting my daughter." "How wonderful! I'm sure she'll be so happy to see you." "I'll be gone a few days. Would you mind keeping an eye on the place? I'll leave you my cell number and Grace's address just in case." Of course, of course. You go enjoy your time with family." I wrote down the information on her notepad, the Lincoln Park address looking almost accusatory in black ink. Helen had no idea why I was really giving her this information. If something happened to me in Chicago, at least someone would know where I'd gone. That night, I barely slept. Morning came gray and cool, typical March weather in Ohio. I showered, dressed in my good slacks and a polo shirt, grabbed my packed suitcase and headed to the bus station. The Columbus terminal smelled of diesel and coffee. I bought a bottle of water and found my bus, settling into a window seat for the 7-hour journey. Ohio landscape rolled past, flat and familiar, gradually giving way to Indiana farmland. I spent the time reviewing everything I knew. Grace, desperate for money. Craig with his expensive tastes and probable gambling debts, based on what Sarah had mentioned before she died. A townhouse in Lincoln Park they couldn't afford. Questions to my colleagues about my finances and competence. An unexpected invitation after a year of silence. I'd taught Grace chess when she was young. She'd learned quickly, absorbing strategies, seeing moves ahead. She'd beaten me by the time she was 13. Maybe I'd taught her too well. Maybe she thought she could outmaneuver her old man. The Chicago skyline appeared in the late afternoon, all steel and glass against a pale sky. I'd been here twice before, both times to visit Grace in cheaper apartments. Lincoln Park was a significant upgrade, the kind of place that required serious money. The bus station in Chicago was chaos, but I navigated it with the patience of age. A taxi took me north through the city, past neighborhoods that grew progressively more expensive. Clean streets, restored brownstones, designer boutiques. The driver dropped me in front of a beautiful brick townhouse, 3 stories with bay windows and a small front garden behind wrought iron fencing. My engineer's eye estimated costs automatically. This property was worth well over $1 million. Grace and Craig couldn't afford this, not legitimately. I stood on the sidewalk with my suitcase, looking at the perfect facade. Window boxes held early spring flowers. The brass house numbers gleamed. Everything about the place screamed money, success, stability. Everything about it was a lie. I picked up my bag and walked toward the front steps, each footfall deliberate. Whatever Grace had planned, whatever trap she'd spent 2 months preparing, I was about to step into it. But I'd spent my career building structures that wouldn't fall. I knew about foundations, about support beams, about finding weaknesses in seemingly solid constructions. Grace had forgotten one important thing. She'd learned chess from me. But I'd been playing the game 30 years before she was born. The townhouse loomed before me, all brick and polish. I climbed the first step, then the second. My finger reached for the doorbell. Time to find out what my daughter had become. I stood at the door for a moment, adjusting my grip on the suitcase handle, then pressed the doorbell. A melodic chime echoed inside the townhouse. Silence followed. 30 seconds passed. I rang again, leaning closer to listen for footsteps. Nothing. The house felt empty, though lights glowed behind the curtained windows. I pulled out my phone and dialed Grace's number. It rang once, then her voicemail. "The number you have dialed is not available. Please leave a message." Her recorded voice sounded cheerful, unconcerned. "Grace, it's Dad. I'm here at your door. Call me back." I knocked firmly. 3 solid raps that should carry through the house. Still nothing. Checked my watch, 4:47 p.m. She knew I was coming today. I'd confirmed the time yesterday. The door handle didn't budge when I tested it, locked naturally. I stepped back, surveying the street. Other townhouses stood in perfect rows, their facades immaculate. A woman walked a small dog 2 houses down. A car passed slowly, looking for parking. Normal neighborhood sounds, normal evening activities. But something felt fundamentally wrong. I sat on the front steps, suitcase beside me, and tried calling again. Voicemail. Then I texted, "I'm here at your address. Where are you?" The message showed as delivered. No response appeared. March evening cold crept through my jacket. I'd been traveling since morning, eaten only a sandwich at the bus station. Exhaustion tugged at my bones, but confusion kept me alert. Grace had invited me. She'd been insistent, almost urgent about the visit. Now she wasn't even home. 5:30 came and went. I called twice more. Nothing. My frustration built alongside a deeper unease. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was intentional. Standing stiffly, I walked around the side of the townhouse, trying to peer through windows. Curtains covered every pane, thick fabric revealing nothing. No movement, no shadows, no sign of life inside. I returned to the front steps and sat again. By 5:45, I'd been waiting an hour. My engineer's mind calculated automatically. This townhouse, in this neighborhood, probably rented for $4,000 or $5,000 monthly. How did a marketing manager and financial consultant afford it? Even combined salaries wouldn't stretch this far, not with Chicago prices, unless they were drowning in debt, unless they desperately needed money from somewhere else, from someone else. The thought crystallized as I noticed the man working on the lawn next door. Latino, maybe mid-40s, wearing work clothes with a landscape company logo on the shirt. He'd been trimming hedges since I arrived, but now he kept glancing my way. Not casual looks, nervous ones. Abruptly, he set down his tools and walked toward me, movements quick and furtive. Close up, I saw dirt under his fingernails, worry etched across his face. "Senor," he said urgently, voice low, "you need to leave, now." I frowned. "Excuse me?" He glanced back at Grace's house, then at me. "This is a trap. They called the police. They say you are stalking them." My brain struggled to process the words. "What? Who are you? What are you talking about?" "Your daughter, her husband." Another nervous glance toward the house. "I heard them talking 2 days ago. They said when you come, they will call police. They say you violate protection order." "Protection order?" I stood, towering over him. "I don't know what you mean. She invited me here. I know it is wrong. I hear them." His voice dropped further. "But police will come. You must go." "This is insane. You must be confused. Please, senor, I cannot be here when police come. My papers—" He trailed off, backing away. The implication hung clear between us. "Wait, are you saying—" "I am sorry. I try to warn you." He hurried back to the neighbor's yard, quickly gathering his tools, stuffing them into a truck. Within 2 minutes, he drove away. I stood alone on the sidewalk, stunned. Checked my watch, 6:15. His warning echoed in my head. A trap. Protection order. Police coming. It couldn't be real. It couldn't be— Sirens, distant but growing louder. My stomach dropped. I fumbled for my phone, frozen with indecision. Leave? Stay and confront Grace? Call a lawyer? The sirens grew closer, distinctive wail cutting through the quiet neighborhood. 2 police cars turned onto the street. My heart hammered. The landscaper had been telling the truth. Both cars pulled up directly in front of the townhouse. 4 officers emerged with practiced efficiency, 2 from each vehicle. Their movements were professional, controlled, not aggressive but absolutely authoritative. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered man in his 30s, called out, "Sir, step away from the door. Keep your hands where we can see them." I raised my hands slightly, phone still clutched in my right. "Officers, there's been a mistake. Sir, put the phone down and step into the yard." His tone firmed, brooking no argument. I complied, moving slowly and carefully into the small front garden. 1 officer stayed near the car radio. The others formed a loose perimeter around me. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. "Officers, I'm visiting my daughter. She invited me here." The lead officer studied me. "Sir, are you Hiram Butler?" "Yes, but—" "Mr. Butler, we need you to remain calm. We have some questions for you." Behind him, the front door opened. Grace appeared, and my relief lasted exactly 1 second before I saw her face. Carefully arranged fear, eyes wide, one hand at her throat. Craig stood behind her, hand on her shoulder in protective display, his expression concerned and grave. I stared at them, confusion warring with the first cold touch of understanding. "Grace, tell them!" Her voice came out shaking, theatrical but convincing. "Dad, please, you need to stop this." The lead officer pulled folded papers from his jacket. "Mr. Butler, we have an order of protection issued by Cook County Court." He handed them to me. My hands shook as I took them, unfolding the official document. Court seal at the top. Grace's name as petitioner, my name as respondent. Date issued 3 weeks ago, mid-February. The order's language was formal, legal, damning. Stay 500 feet away from Grace Butler Morgan and her residence. No contact by phone, email, or any means. My voice cracked. I was never notified of this. "The order was served to your address of record," the officer said. "What address?" He consulted the papers. 847 Maple Street, Columbus, Ohio. My world tilted. I haven't lived there since 2010. I was never served. I never received this. A second officer, younger, spoke up. That's for the court to determine, sir. Grace's voice carried from the doorway, trembling and tear-filled. He's been sending me messages, showing up at my work. I was terrified to come to my own home. I spun toward her. Grace, what are you doing? You called me. You invited me here 3 days ago. I grabbed my phone from my pocket. I have the call log. I have your voicemail. Sir, you'll have opportunity to present evidence in court, the lead officer said. Craig's voice came smooth and concerned, though I caught something smug underneath. Officer, this has been going on for months. We've documented everything. The calls, the drive-bys, the threats. Threats? My voice rose. I never threatened anyone. The officer's expression remained professionally neutral. Mr. Butler, based on this order of protection and your presence at this location in violation of said order, we're placing you under arrest. The words hit like physical blows. He began reading Miranda rights as his partner moved behind me. I heard the words but couldn't process them. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Cold metal circled my wrists. The handcuffs clicked shut, tighter than I'd imagined. The sensation was surreal, humiliating. This is insane, I said, voice steadier than I felt. She invited me here. Check her phone records. The officer guided me toward the police car, hand on my head as I ducked into the back seat. Through the window, I watched Craig retrieve my suitcase from the porch. Officer, should we hold on to his belongings? Craig asked. We'll take it. It's evidence. Grace stood in the doorway, still performing. I just wanted him to get help. I didn't want this. Tears rolled down her cheeks, perfectly timed. I stared at my daughter through the car window. Really saw her for the first time in years. Not the child I'd raised. Not even the distant money-focused woman from the funeral. Someone else entirely. Someone capable of this calculated cruelty. As the car began pulling away, Craig turned back toward the house. For just a moment, his mask slipped. A smile crossed his face, quick and satisfied, before he caught himself and rearranged his expression. That smile told me everything. This wasn't desperation or fear. This was a plan, executed exactly as intended. The police station smelled of industrial cleaner and old coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. Sounds echoed, voices, phones ringing, doors slamming somewhere distant. Processing felt mechanical, dehumanizing. Fingerprints rolled onto cards, photos taken from multiple angles. My personal items logged one by one. Belt, wallet, phone, watch, wedding ring. Everything placed in a clear plastic bag. I cooperated silently, still too stunned to fully register what was happening. A detective, different from the street officers, led me to an interview room. Middle-aged woman with gray streaks in her hair, tired eyes that had seen too much. She went through questions methodically. When did I arrive in Chicago? Why was I here? When did I last contact my daughter? I explained everything. Grace had called 3 days ago, invited me to visit, said she wanted to reconcile. I'd taken a bus from Columbus this morning, arrived around 5 o'clock, found no one home. The detective took notes, expression neutral. Do you have proof of this invitation? My phone, her voicemail, call logs showing her call to me. We'll examine your phone. How could I violate an order I never knew existed? The question burst out, frustration breaking through. That's a legal question, Mr. Butler. You'll need to discuss it with your attorney. I don't have an attorney. I'm from Ohio. You can call one, or one will be appointed to you. The surreal quality intensified, being treated like a criminal for visiting my daughter. Everything I said, everything I tried to explain, met with professional distance. They placed me in a holding cell around 9 o'clock. Concrete bench along one wall, metal toilet in the corner, smell of sweat and despair. 2 other men occupied the space, one drunk and belligerent, one sleeping curled against the wall. I sat on the bench, back against cold cinder block, and finally had space to think. Grace's fake tears, Craig's hidden smile, Miguel's desperate warning. The protective order served to an address I'd left 15 years ago. The perfectly timed phone invitation, 3 days ago. Understanding crystallized like ice forming on glass. This wasn't spontaneous. This was meticulously planned, every detail considered. The timeline stretched back. Tom said Grace had called him 2 months ago, asking about my finances. The protective order was issued 3 weeks ago. Then the invitation 3 days ago, timed perfectly. The invitation had been bait. I'd walked straight into their trap. They wanted something. My house, probably, my savings, control of my assets. And they'd decided the easiest way was to have me declared incompetent or dangerous, get some kind of guardianship or power of attorney. My daughter had done this, my own child. Fury built underneath the shock, cold and calculating rather than hot and explosive. But alongside the anger came something else, the beginnings of a plan. If Grace and Craig thought they could destroy me this easily, they'd made a serious miscalculation. They'd forgotten who I was, what I was capable of when crossed. Hours crawled past. The drunk eventually quieted. The other man's snoring filled the cell. I couldn't sleep, too angry and too busy thinking. The wall clock visible through the bars showed 11, then 2 in the morning. By dawn, gray light filtering through the high window, I'd moved past being a victim. Strategy formed in my mind, pieces clicking into place the way they had when I designed structural solutions for 40 years. First, get out of this immediate situation. Second, find out exactly what Grace and Craig wanted. Third, make them regret ever thinking they could prey on me. Around 7, an officer came to the cell. "Butler, you're going to bond court." They transported me with other defendants in a van, then placed us in another holding area at the courthouse. More waiting, more institutional smells and sounds. Given access to a phone directory, I searched for criminal defense attorneys, found Robert Chen's listing, called the office. "I need immediate representation for a bond hearing," I told the receptionist. "Mr. Chen can meet you at the courthouse. His retainer is $5,000. I grimaced at the amount, but didn't hesitate. "I'll pay it. Tell him Cook County Courthouse, Bond Court. I go before the judge in an hour." Waiting in the holding area with other defendants, I heard various names called, watched people shuffled in and out, finally heard my own. An officer led me toward the courtroom. My legs felt stiff from the uncomfortable night, but my mind was clear. Grace wanted a war. She just didn't know it yet. A guard led me to a small consultation room before the hearing. Robert Chen waited inside, impeccable in a charcoal suit, tablet in hand. 52, Asian American, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Butler," he extended his hand. "I reviewed the basics of your case. This protective order situation is concerning." I shook his hand, aware of my wrinkled clothes and unshaven face. "I never knew it existed. She sent it to an address I haven't lived at in 15 years. We'll address that." Chen opened his tablet, scrolling through notes. "First, let's get you out of here. The retainer, $5,000, I'll wire it immediately after release." He nodded approval. "Good. Bond court moves quickly. Follow my lead." The courtroom buzzed with activity, multiple cases cycling through like an assembly line. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, barely glanced up as names were called. When mine came, Chen stood beside me, radiating professional confidence. The prosecutor, young and overworked, presented the basics. Violation of protective order. Defendant appeared at victim's residence despite clear restrictions. Chen countered smoothly. "Your Honor, my client has no criminal record, owns property in Ohio, maintains strong community ties. He was invited to Chicago by his daughter and has documentation proving this. He had no knowledge of the protective order, which was improperly served to an old address." The judge looked at me for the first time. "Bail set at $10,000. Chen leaned close. "You'll pay 10% to a bail bondsman. Your house serves as collateral." I calculated quickly. Another $1,000 added to mounting costs. Fine. Processing out took hours. Paperwork, bail bondsman's office, more paperwork. By early afternoon, I finally stepped into Chicago's cold March air, free but not vindicated. Chen handed me his business card. "Come to my office tomorrow at 2. Bring any documentation you have." I photographed everything before I left Columbus. Cloud storage. His eyebrows rose, impressed. "Smart. See you tomorrow, Mr. Butler." The Budget Inn sat on Chicago's outskirts, worn but functional. $65 per night. I paid cash for 3 nights, watching my money dwindle. The clerk barely looked up from his phone. My room was small, bed sagging slightly, walls thin enough to hear televisions in adjacent rooms. But it had a shower, and that was all I needed. Standing under hot water, I let exhaustion wash over me, along with the grime. First shower since yesterday morning in Columbus, a lifetime ago. Afterward, I sat on the bed in a towel, laptop open. The police had returned my suitcase when I was released. Everything intact, including my computer. I accessed my cloud storage and opened the folder I'd created before leaving home. Property deeds showing my current address clearly. Bank statements from February proving my location through transactions. Medical appointment records with timestamps. Receipts from Columbus stores, each one dated, each one an alibi. Also the phone log showing Grace's incoming call, the one inviting me here. I organized everything into a new folder for Chen, methodically categorizing each piece of evidence. Engineering habits died hard. Organization, precision, documentation. A photo caught my eye. Grace at age 10, gap-toothed and laughing, holding a trophy from her school science fair. I'd helped her build that volcano project, spent weekends teaching her about chemical reactions. "When did you become this person?" I asked the screen. No answer came, just the hum of the laptop fan and muffled television sounds through thin walls. But the question shifted something inside me. She'd tried to destroy me for money, my own daughter. Had planned it for months, lied to courts, manufactured evidence, tried to steal everything I'd worked for. Once I proved my innocence, and I wouldn't just walk away. She'd learned what consequences meant. I closed the laptop and lay back on the bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Chen. We'd build my defense. But after that, Grace would discover her father wasn't as easy to destroy as she'd thought. Chen's office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown building, all glass and steel. His reception area gleamed with polish, law degrees lining the walls, leather furniture that whispered expense. I arrived at 2 o'clock exactly, wearing my cleanest shirt, having shaved in the motel bathroom. Chen's conference room offered views of Lake Michigan. He pulled up a chair and opened his laptop. "Let's see what you have." I walked him through each document, each photograph, each piece of evidence. He studied them carefully, taking notes. "This is strong," he said finally. "You have alibi evidence for every date she claims you were in Chicago." He pulled up the protective order application. "Let's look at her sworn statement." The dates leaped out. February 12th. Appeared outside her office building at 4 in the afternoon. February 19th. Stood across the street from her home. February 15th through 20th. Sent over 30 threatening text messages. Here's my counter evidence. I opened my files. February 12th, I had a doctor's appointment in Columbus, 3 o'clock. Check the timestamp on this receipt from the pharmacy afterward. 5:15 p.m. That's a 30-minute drive from the doctor's office. Chen nodded slowly. February 19th, I was grocery shopping in Columbus. Receipt shows 4:47 p.m. Security cameras will confirm. And the text messages. My phone records will show I sent nothing to her number during that period. 0 messages. Chen leaned back. Someone spoofed your number, made it appear the text came from you, but they originated from a different device. How is that possible? Technology. Apps exist specifically for this purpose. Not difficult if you know what you're doing. He paused. Your son-in-law, financial consultant. He'd have the knowledge. The pieces clicked. Craig, desperate for money, technologically savvy enough to manipulate digital evidence. Here's my plan, Chen said. Subpoena Grace's phone records directly from the carrier. Get the routing data that shows where those texts actually originated. Pull security footage from your doctor's office and the supermarket. File a motion to dismiss based on fabricated evidence. How long? 2, maybe 3 weeks to gather everything. Hearing will be scheduled for late March. He named additional costs. Another $3,000 to $4,000 for investigation, court appearances, expert witnesses if needed. I grimaced but nodded. The total was approaching $10,000. My carefully managed retirement funds bleeding away because of my daughter's greed. But I had no choice. Freedom first. Revenge later. The next several days blurred together. Mornings at the corner coffee shop, afternoons walking Chicago streets, avoiding Lincoln Park because of the restraining order. Evenings alone in my motel room, television flickering, mind constantly working. I called Mrs. Chen in Columbus. Everything okay at the house? Fine, fine. I water your plants, bring in mail. You take care of business there. Chen called with updates. Got security footage from your doctor's office. Clear images of you entering at 2:53, leaving at 3:41. Another call 2 days later. Supermarket provided footage and transaction records. You're on camera at checkout, 4:47 p.m., time stamped perfectly. Each piece of evidence vindicated me, proved my innocence. But vindication wasn't enough anymore. Late one night, I lay in bed researching Illinois law on my laptop. Protective order statutes, false reporting penalties, elder abuse definitions. I took notes in a spiral notebook, old habits from decades of project management, timeline of Grace's actions, her potential motives, their financial situation. If they were this desperate, they must be drowning in debt. The expensive townhouse, Craig's gambling, Grace's designer clothes at the funeral, all symptoms of people living beyond their means. I searched public records online, finding hints but nothing conclusive. Not yet. But the seed was planted. Once I cleared my name, I'd investigate further, find their vulnerabilities, their pressure points. I closed the laptop around 2 in the morning, lay back against thin pillows, hearing someone's television through the wall. First, prove innocence, I whispered to the darkness. Then, make them pay. Chen called the next morning. I have news. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I was there by 1 o'clock, too anxious to wait. He met me with satisfaction in his eyes. Got the phone records back. He spread printouts across his conference table. Very interesting. The papers showed Grace's incoming messages, dates, and times matching her claims. But Chen pointed to additional data. Look at the routing information. These messages appear to be from your number, but the carrier data shows they originated from a different device entirely, different IP address, different location. Meaning, someone used a spoofing application, made it look like your number but wasn't your phone at all. Craig, the name tasted bitter. He's a financial consultant. He'd know about this technology. Possibly. We can't prove who yet, but we can prove it wasn't you. Chen pulled up more documents. Also got your security footage. He opened video files on his laptop. Columbus Medical Center parking lot. Timestamp, February 12th. My car pulling in at 2:51 p.m. Interior footage showed me entering reception at 2:53, signing in. Another angle captured me leaving at 3:41. Pharmacy next. Chen clicked another file. My car in the parking lot, clearly visible license plate. Timestamp, 5:15 p.m. Supermarket footage for February 19th. This video showed me pushing a cart through aisles, reaching checkout. The timestamp read 4:47 p.m. exactly. Every single alibi checks out, Chen said. Her claims are demonstrably false. Relief flooded through me, though I'd known I was innocent. Proof was different, tangible. With this evidence, I can file a motion to dismiss all charges and vacate the protective order. How long until hearing? I'll file this week. Probably 7 to 10 days for a hearing date. Chen continued explaining the protective order process. It was issued ex parte, without you present, standard procedure when someone claims immediate danger. But notice of the hearing should have been sent to your current address. He showed me the copy. Notice mailed to 847 Maple Street, Columbus, Ohio. How did she even know that address? I bought my current house in 2010. Public records, property sales are public information. She must have researched your history. Chen met my eyes. Either she got lucky that you never received notice, or she deliberately used your old address hoping you wouldn't. She knew. My voice was flat. Everything was calculated. It's looking that way. Unfortunately, judges often grant these orders on the petitioner's word alone. They err on the side of caution, which is usually appropriate, but the system can be abused. A knock interrupted us. Chen's assistant opened the door. Mr. Chen, Mr. Rodriguez is here. My heart jumped. Miguel? The landscaper entered, baseball cap clutched in his hands. Same nervous energy from our brief encounter on Grace's street. Work clothes clean but worn, face creased with worry. You, I stood. You warned me. He nodded. Si, senor, I am Miguel Rodriguez. Chen gestured to a chair. Mr. Rodriguez contacted my office 3 days ago. He has information about your case. Miguel sat on the edge of the chair, clearly uncomfortable. I am afraid. My situation, I have no papers, no documents. Understanding hit. Immigration status? C. I work hard, good worker, but no papers. I am scared to come forward. Then why did you? I asked quietly. His eyes met mine. Because is wrong. What they do to you is wrong. Chen opened a notepad. Tell Mr. Butler what you told me. Miguel took a breath. I work for Garcia Landscaping Company. We maintain properties in Lincoln Park. I have worked at the house next to your daughter's home for 2 years. He explained that 2 days before I arrived, early March, he'd been trimming hedges near the property line. Grace and Craig had been talking on their back patio. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. Your daughter, she say, he will be here Thursday. We call police exactly 30 minutes after he arrives. Miguel's English was accented but clear, his memory precise. The husband, Craig, he asked, You are sure the order will hold? Grace answer, Judge believed every word, and I used his old address. He will never know until it is too late. My hands clenched into fists. Miguel continued. Craig say, once he is arrested, we can push for conservatorship, say he is incompetent, then we get control of everything. The word hit like a physical blow. Conservatorship. They'd planned to have me declared incompetent, take legal control of my finances, my property, my life. Grace says something about the house. The house alone is worth close to $300,000, plus his retirement accounts. Miguel looked apologetic. I did not understand all words, but I know they plan to trick you. He'd also heard them mention getting power of attorney, selling my house quickly, accessing my accounts. I hear the date, Thursday. When I see you Thursday standing at the door, I know as you, they plan to hurt. Chen leaned forward. Why did you wait to come forward, Mr. Rodriguez? I was scared. Immigration, you understand. If I speak, maybe police ask questions, maybe deportation. His voice dropped. But I cannot sleep. My conscience, it hurt me. That man did nothing wrong, and they destroy him for money. My throat tightened. Thank you. You probably saved my freedom. Maybe more. Not life, Miguel said softly. But maybe your freedom, your money, your dignity. After Miguel left, Chen assured him they'd protect his identity as much as legally possible. I sat in stunned silence. This is huge, Chen said. Direct evidence of premeditation and conspiracy. Miguel's testimony shows Grace knowingly filed a false report, intentionally used the wrong address, and planned to use your arrest as leverage for financial control. He was already planning strategy. I'll file a comprehensive motion to dismiss all criminal charges and vacate the protective order. Miguel's sworn statement, the phone records, the surveillance footage, it's overwhelming evidence. Could I file a civil suit, malicious prosecution? Potentially. But let's handle the criminal case first. Get you completely clear. Chen checked his calendar. Motion filed today. Prosecutor will need time to respond. Hearing probably in 10 days, mid-March. He looked at me seriously. You should prepare for the possibility of seeing Grace and Craig in court. A cold smile crossed my face. I'm ready. Back at the motel that evening, I sat on the bed with my laptop open, reviewing everything I'd learned. Grace's deliberate fraud. Craig's plan for conservatorship. Their scheme to steal my life savings, sell my home, take everything I'd built over 40 years. I tallied the damage so far. 1,000 in bail, 5,000 to Chen, nearly 4,000 more in legal costs, 500 in motel fees, missed time, stress, humiliation, approaching $11,000, plus the emotional cost of betrayal by my own child. But it was more than money. They'd tried to destroy my freedom, my reputation, my independence, tried to have me declared incompetent, a danger to myself and others. I pulled out my spiral notebook and wrote in careful block letters. Once this is over, she'll learn what consequences mean. The transformation was complete. I'd arrived in Chicago as a hopeful father, maybe naive, willing to believe in reconciliation. I'd been arrested as a victim, confused and frightened. Now I was something else entirely, a strategist, an engineer analyzing a problem, planning solutions. I opened new browser tabs, researching Illinois civil law, elder abuse statutes, fraud penalties, malicious prosecution elements, taking notes, building understanding. What did Grace and Craig have to lose? What mattered to them most? Money, obviously. Status. Their expensive lifestyle in Lincoln Park that they couldn't actually afford. I'd find their vulnerabilities, their pressure points, their debts and lies and weaknesses. They'd wanted to take everything from me. Instead, I would take everything from them. Not through violence or threats, through the same tools they had used against me: the legal system, documentation, evidence, patience. I closed the laptop around midnight, lying back on the uncomfortable bed. Someone in the next room was watching a late-night talk show, canned laughter bleeding through thin walls. But I didn't hear it. I heard only the gears turning in my mind, pieces clicking into place, plans forming. Grace had forgotten something crucial. I'd spent 40 years solving complex problems, calculating loads and stresses, finding weak points in structures and reinforcing them, or, when necessary, knowing exactly where to apply pressure to bring the whole thing down. Morning light filtered through the motel curtains, gray and uninspiring. I dressed in my one good suit, slightly wrinkled from weeks packed in a suitcase. The bathroom mirror reflected someone older than I remembered, eyes harder, jawline set in permanent determination. 3 weeks in this place, 3 weeks away from my home, because of her. I checked out at the desk, paid my final bill, and took a taxi to the Cook County Courthouse. Chen waited outside the entrance, briefcase in hand, expression confident. "Everything's in order," he said as we walked toward the courtroom. Prosecutor agreed to dismissal. Judge will hear the evidence and vacate the protective order. Will she be there? She has to be. It's her order. Something cold settled in my chest. Good. I want her to see this. The courtroom wasn't crowded, just a few other cases on the docket. Judge Patricia Morrison entered promptly, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and an efficient demeanor that suggested she'd seen every deception possible. Case number 2025 CR 8847, People v. Butler. Motion to dismiss and vacate protective order. The side door opened. Grace entered first, wearing an expensive navy dress that probably cost more than my entire legal defense. She'd styled herself to look fragile, vulnerable. Craig followed, hand possessively on her back, expensive suit perfectly tailored. Their attorney, a nervous-looking man in his 30s, trailed behind. First time seeing them since my arrest. Grace wouldn't meet my eyes. Craig stared at me with barely concealed hostility, as if I'd wronged him rather than the other way around. Chen stood. "Your Honor, may I present our evidence?" He methodically laid out each piece. Surveillance footage from Columbus showing me at the doctor's office, entering at 2:53 p.m. on February 12th, leaving at 3:41. Pharmacy parking lot camera capturing my car at 5:15. Supermarket footage from February 19th, timestamp 4:47 p.m. Every date Grace claimed I'd stalked her in Chicago, I was provably in Columbus. Then the phone records. Chen explained the spoofing, how the threatening texts appeared to come from my number, but originated from a different device entirely. Technical data that couldn't be disputed. Finally, the voicemail. Grace's own voice played in the silent courtroom. "Dad, I'd love for you to visit. It would mean so much to me. Please come to Chicago. We have plenty of space." The invitation that started everything. Chen read Miguel's affidavit aloud. The landscaper hadn't appeared in person due to immigration concerns, but his statement was clear. 2 days before Mr. Butler arrived, I overheard Ms. Butler Morgan and Mr. Morgan discussing their plan. She said, "Once he's arrested, we can push for conservatorship." Mr. Morgan mentioned getting control of everything and specifically stated, "The house alone is worth close to $300,000. Grace's attorney attempted a weak defense. "Your Honor, my client genuinely believed she was in danger." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, given this overwhelming evidence, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Mr. Butler." Judge Morrison's expression hardened. "Motion granted. All charges dismissed." She turned her gaze to Grace, who'd gone pale. "Ms. Butler Morgan, this court takes protective orders very seriously. They exist to protect genuine victims of harassment and violence. The evidence strongly suggests you filed false statements under oath." Grace's eyes widened. Her attorney started to speak, but the judge continued. "I'm vacating the protective order effective immediately. I'm also advising the state's attorney may wish to investigate this matter further. Perjury is a serious crime, as is conspiracy to commit fraud. Grace's attorney tried again. Your Honor, my client, I've made my ruling. This case is closed. The gavel fell with finality. I stood, legally vindicated, but the feeling was hollow. As I turned to leave, I caught Grace's eye. For just a moment, fear replaced her performance. Real fear. Craig whispered something harsh in her ear, practically dragging her toward the side exit. Outside, Chen shook my hand. Clean victory, congratulations. Will they charge her for the perjury? He shook his head. Unlikely. Prosecutors rarely pursue perjury in protective order cases. Hard to prove criminal intent, and they have limited resources for what they consider low-priority offenses. My jaw tightened. So she walks away. Criminally, probably yes, but you have strong grounds for a civil suit: malicious prosecution, intentional infliction of emotional distress, abuse of process. We discussed final costs. Chen's total bill came to $9,000. Add the $1,000 in bail, motel expenses, food, transportation. Roughly $15,000 total. Civil suits are expensive to pursue, Chen said carefully, and they may not have significant assets to collect from. I'll think about it. I shook his hand. Thank you. You saved me. You saved yourself, Mr. Butler. You were smart to document everything before you came to Chicago. That foresight made all the difference. We parted ways at the courthouse steps. I went directly to the bus station, the same one I'd arrived at 3 weeks ago, sat on the same plastic chairs, waiting for the Columbus bus. As the bus pulled away from Chicago, I watched the skyline recede. 3 weeks of my life spent in that city. Arrested, jailed, accused by my own daughter of crimes I never committed. The landscape rolled past, familiar and empty. Hours on the road gave me time to think. The court had given me justice, technically. Charges dismissed, order vacated, my innocence proven. But Grace and Craig tried to destroy me and faced no real consequences. A judge's warning, nothing more. The law has limits. But I don't have to. Columbus appeared at dusk, familiar streets leading toward home. The taxi dropped me at my house as darkness settled. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it. Mrs. Chen saw me from her window and waved enthusiastically. Welcome back. I watered your plants. I waved back, managed something approximating a smile, and entered my house. The familiar smell hit me first. Home. But I wasn't the same person who'd left. I unpacked mechanically, hanging the wrinkled suit, putting dirty clothes in the hamper, then sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water, notebook in front of me. I began writing, listed what happened: false arrest, fraudulent protective order, 3 weeks in Chicago, $15,000 in costs, humiliation, fear, the attempt to have me declared incompetent and steal everything I'd worked for. Listed what Grace and Craig wanted: my house, my savings, power of attorney over my life. Listed what they got: nothing, except a judge's warning they'd probably ignore. No criminal charges, no consequences. I stared at the page, pen poised. Old Hiram would have let it go. Accepted the legal victory as enough. Moved on with life, grateful to be free. New Hiram wrote, "They tried to take everything. They should lose everything." I closed the notebook and sat in the quiet house. Tomorrow, I'd start gathering information about their lives, their finances, their vulnerabilities. Tonight, I accepted what I'd become. They needed to understand actions have consequences. Morning arrived with spring sunlight streaming through my kitchen window. I sat at my small home office desk, laptop open, coffee steaming beside me. The shift was complete, from defending myself to planning their destruction. I started with basic online research. LinkedIn showed Grace as marketing manager at Tech Vibe Solutions, a mid-sized tech company in Chicago. Craig worked at Midwest Financial Advisors as a financial consultant. Ironic, given what I suspected about their finances. Facebook profiles revealed carefully curated images of expensive lifestyle. Dinners at high-end restaurants, weekend trips, designer clothes. The Lincoln Park townhouse featured prominently in background shots. Property records confirmed what I'd suspected. The townhouse wasn't owned, it was rented. Monthly cost, approximately $4,500. Cross-referencing public databases showed no property ownership in either of their names. My engineer's eye saw the pattern immediately. They were living beyond their means. The question was, how far beyond? I made a list in my notebook. What's their actual income? What are their debts? Why were they so desperate for my money? What's their breaking point? I needed professional help. Searching for financial consultants in Columbus, I found Anderson & Associates Financial Consulting. Their website advertised asset analysis and due diligence services. 2 days later, I sat in a downtown office across from Jennifer Anderson. 45, sharp features, credentials on the wall showing her background as a forensic accountant. I need background research on 2 people, I explained carefully. Public records only, everything legal and ethical. She studied me. Due diligence, estate planning, personal matter. They wronged me. I want to understand their financial situation. I don't do anything illegal or unethical, Mr. Butler. Neither do I. Only public records, court filings, property records, business registrations. Nothing that requires consent or subterfuge. We discussed what was available. Court records showing lawsuits and judgments, property ownership data, business licenses, some credit information from public filings. All perfectly legal. $500 for a comprehensive public records report, she said. I provided Grace and Craig's full names, addresses, and employers. As I stood to leave, a thought occurred to me. One more thing. Do you know about partition sales? Her eyebrows rose. Forced sale of jointly owned property? Yes. Why? Just curious. I may need advice on that later. Back home, I went through personal files, looking for my wife's estate documents. Found her will from 5 years ago, refreshing my memory on details I'd tried to forget. Sarah had left our family cottage in northern Michigan, near Traverse City. 50% to me, 50% to Grace. We'd purchased it 30 years ago as a summer retreat. Last appraisal during estate settlement, $180,000. I hadn't been there since Sarah's death. Too painful. Grace hadn't visited either, as far as I knew. We split property tax bills. I paid my half promptly. Grace paid hers late, sometimes requiring reminders. The realization hit like a physical thing. This was leverage. I researched Michigan law. A co-owner could force a partition sale if owners couldn't agree on property disposition. Grace couldn't afford to buy my half, $90,000. A forced sale would give me my equity, but, more importantly, would strip her of a sentimental asset and any future value. I wrote in my notebook, first move. 1 week later, Jennifer called. I visited her office that afternoon. She presented a detailed printed report, organized by person. Grace Butler Morgan, she began. Annual salary, $82,000 from Tech Vibe Solutions. No property ownership. Court records show 2 credit card judgments. One for $12,000, another for $8,000, filed last year. Outstanding judgment from a luxury furniture store, $15,000. Public credit reports indicate multiple late payments. She turned pages. Craig Morgan, estimated annual income $95,000. Junior consultant, not a partner at his firm. No property ownership. Larger debt profile. Credit card judgment for $35,000. Personal loan default for $18,000. Garnishment order on his wages filed 6 months ago. Still active. I leaned forward. Garnishment? His wages are being garnished to pay one of the judgments. Probably takes about 15% of his gross pay. She continued. Joint liabilities from court filings. Approximately $85,000 in total judgments. Lincoln Park townhouse rent confirmed at $4,500 monthly. 2 leased vehicles, luxury brands, estimated $1,200 to $1,500 monthly combined. Jennifer met my eyes. They're drowning, Mr. Butler. Combined income about $180,000, but debt service and lifestyle costs are probably over $200,000 annually. They're in a debt spiral, taking on new credit to service old debt. That's why they wanted my assets. Almost certainly. Your house and retirement savings, around $700,000 total, would have solved their problems completely, wiped debts clean, and given them a fresh start. I studied the report, absorbing every detail. What breaks them? She considered. Anything that disrupts income or adds new financial pressure, job loss, new judgment, unexpected expense, they're barely hanging on. One more push could trigger bankruptcy. That evening, I spread the reports across my dining table, notebook open beside them. I wrote methodically. Plan components. 1. Partition sale of Michigan cottage, forces sale, removes sentimental asset, takes away any emergency equity they might access. 2. Civil lawsuit for malicious prosecution, even without winning, creates public record and significant legal costs for them. 3. Inform employers of court case, reputation damage, possible job consequences. 4. Additional financial pressure triggers their collapse, each element perfectly legal, each element devastating. I wasn't just getting revenge, I was dismantling the life they had built on debt and lies, using the same systematic approach I'd used designing buildings for 4 decades. They'd tried to steal everything from me using the legal system. I'd use that same system to take everything from them. A brief moment of doubt surfaced. Would Sarah approve? Would she want me doing this to our daughter? But then I remembered Grace's cold eyes at the funeral, asking about my will before Sarah was even buried, her fake tears in court, her willingness to have me arrested and declared incompetent. She wasn't the daughter we'd raised anymore. She was someone who would destroy her own father for money. I picked up my phone and searched for civil litigation attorneys in Columbus. Time to start making calls. Tomorrow, the execution would begin. 3 weeks of research and planning brought me to David Klein's office in early May. Real estate attorney, 50s, specializing in property disputes. His credentials lined the wall behind an organized desk. Partition sale, I said, sliding the cottage deed across to him. Michigan property, co-owned with my daughter. I want it sold. Klein studied the document. Near Traverse City, nice area. Why force a sale? Sentimental property? Personal reasons. The other owner and I don't see eye to eye anymore. He glanced up. Your daughter, according to the deed. Family dispute? You could say that. Klein explained the process. Michigan law allowed any co-owner to petition for partition when owners couldn't agree on disposition. Court would appoint a commissioner, order appraisal, arrange sale. Each owner received their share of proceeds. Filing fee and my retainer will run about $3,000, he said. I wrote the check without hesitation, money well spent. The petition went to Ottawa County Court within days. Legal language was stark. Irreconcilable differences between co-owners necessitate immediate sale of property. Service of petition mailed to Grace and Craig's Chicago address. Certified delivery required. I imagine them opening that envelope, the panic spreading across their faces. They'll probably try to buy you out or contest it, Klein said when he called to confirm service. They can't afford to buy me out, and they have no legal grounds to contest. Then this should proceed smoothly, hearing in 4 to 6 weeks. Simultaneously, I hired Patricia Lawson, a civil litigation specialist. Her downtown office overlooked the Scioto River, floor-to-ceiling windows suggesting success. Malicious prosecution and intentional infliction of emotional distress, I explained, against my daughter and her husband in Cook County, Illinois. Lawson took notes as I outlined the false protective order, wrongful arrest, conspiracy to obtain conservatorship. She reviewed Chen's files, Miguel's affidavit, the court dismissal. Strong case, she said. Damages? $100,000. Aggressive but justifiable given what they put you through. She paused. Even if we don't collect, it creates permanent public record and forces them to respond, disclose their finances and discovery. Exactly what I want. Filing costs and initial retainer, $2,000. The complaint was served the same week as the cottage hearing notice. 2 legal battles striking simultaneously. Mid-May brought Klein's call. They hired an attorney, trying to delay the sale, claiming sentimental value, requesting time to secure financing to buy your share. What did the court say? Hearing scheduled early June, but their arguments weak. Partition sales are nearly impossible to stop in Michigan. Property rights are fundamental. How much is their attorney costing them? Retainer for this type of case? Probably $8,000 minimum. Satisfaction settled cold in my chest. They were spending money they didn't have, fighting something they couldn't win. I also sent 2 letters in mid-June, carefully worded, professionally formatted. The first went to Tech Vibe Solutions, Attention Human Resources Director. I introduced myself as Grace Butler Morgan's father, explained she'd filed a false protective order resulting in my wrongful arrest, attached court documents showing dismissal and Judge Morrison's warning about perjury, noted the pending civil lawsuit for malicious prosecution, concluded, I believe companies value ethical conduct in employees. I thought you should be aware of this situation. No threats, no demands. Just information in public records. Similar letter to Midwest Financial Advisors regarding Craig. Noted his role as co-conspirator per witness testimony. Emphasized that a financial consultant involved in fraud schemes might concern a financial services firm. Both sent certified mail, return receipts confirming delivery. Each piece applied pressure to a different structural point. Early June brought the cottage hearing. Klein appeared. I didn't need to be present. He called afterward with results. Grace's attorney argued family property, sentimental memories, willingness to buy with financing. His tone suggested what came next. I countered with co-owner's absolute right to partition, no actual financing offer, property unused for 5 years. And judge approved the partition sale. Appraisal within 2 weeks, sale to follow promptly. They spent $8,000 on attorney fees and lost completely. The appraisal came back at $180,000, confirming Jennifer Anderson's estimate. Property was listed, marketed for 2 weeks, then sold at auction in late June for $175,000. After commissioner fees and costs, my check arrived. $87,500. Grace received the same amount. But for her, this was disaster. She needed cash immediately to service debts, not equity she'd have to use for survival. I deposited the check and thought, first strike complete. She lost her safety net and spent $8,000 fighting it. Late June, Patricia Lawson called. They're trying to settle, offering $5,000. Reject it. You're sure? Collection might be difficult. This isn't about money. Reject the offer. Understood. They'll probably try to delay or file bankruptcy to avoid judgment. Even better, I said. Public bankruptcy filing shows everyone what they really are. I tracked everything in a spreadsheet at home. Engineer's precision. Columns for action, date, cost to them, status, impact. The numbers told the story. Cottage partition, $8,000 attorney fee, lost. $87,500 equity immediately needed for debts. Civil lawsuit, response required within 30 days, need attorney, more costs. Employer letters, delivered, received, investigations pending. By late June, multiple fronts showed results. Grace and Craig were in an impossible position. They couldn't afford attorneys for civil defense. They couldn't hide their financial situation anymore. Lawsuit discovery would expose everything. Their employers now knew about serious legal and ethical issues. Lawson called again in early July. They're not responding to the civil suit, can't afford representation, default judgment likely. How long until judgment? 2 months, maybe 3, but collection will be nearly impossible. They have no assets. I don't need the money, I said. I need the public record showing what they did. You'll have that forever. I sat back in my home office, looking at the spreadsheet, watching dominoes fall exactly as calculated. They'd tried to destroy me using the system. I was using that same system to dismantle everything they'd built. July brought news from multiple directions. Patricia Lawson called first. Grace Butler Morgan's employer contacted our office. They're conducting an internal investigation into her conduct. Tech Vibe Solutions. HR department was investigating ethics violations. Employee filed false police report against family member. Participated in scheme to defraud elderly parent. Company policy required ethical conduct, especially for client-facing marketing roles. 2 weeks later, she's been placed on unpaid leave pending investigation conclusion. Another week, she resigned by mutual agreement, the formal phrase for forced resignation. Without Grace's $82,000 salary, their financial equation became mathematically impossible. Craig's situation developed more slowly, but just as inevitably. Financial services formed a small, gossipy community in Chicago. Word spread about the consultant involved in a fraud case. Midwest Financial Advisors began fielding questions from clients. Late July, Craig lost several wealthy clients who didn't want scandal association. The firm didn't fire him, but reduced his assignment significantly. Public records showed his garnishment order reflected decreased wages. Their combined income, which barely supported their lifestyle before, had collapsed. Early August brought the cascade I'd anticipated. Creditors monitoring public court records saw the civil lawsuit and cottage sale. Signs of financial distress. Credit card companies increased interest rates to maximum penalties. Judgment creditors filed demand letters and new collection suits. I tracked it all through Cook County's public records system. 3 new collection lawsuits filed in 2 weeks. Total, $35,000 in additional debts now in active collection. Grace and Craig faced impossible choices. Fight the suits without money for attorneys, ignore them and receive default judgments, or declare bankruptcy. Mid-August, the bankruptcy filing appeared in federal court records. Chapter 7, Liquidation and Discharge. The filing was public record. I reviewed every page. Total debts listed, $142,000. Original $85,000 in judgments, plus $35,000 in collections, plus $22,000 in other debts accumulated trying to fight. Assets, minimal, no property, leased cars returned, savings depleted by attorney fees. Income, Grace unemployed, Craig's income reduced to maybe $60,000 annually. Every detail of their financial collapse was now public, searchable, permanent. The bankruptcy trustee would determine what could be discharged. Debts arising from fraud or malicious conduct, like my lawsuit, might survive bankruptcy protection. But I didn't care about collection anymore. The public record existed. Their reputation was destroyed. Mid-August brought final confirmation of consequences. Lawson compiled information from various sources. Grace, unemployed, bankruptcy filed, professional reputation ruined in Chicago marketing circles, blackballed from similar positions. Craig, income slashed, clients lost, bankruptcy filed, reputation damaged throughout financial consulting community. Together, credit destroyed for 7 to 10 years, couldn't rent decent apartment with bankruptcy on record, forced to downgrade their entire life. They'd moved from the Lincoln Park townhouse, couldn't afford $4,500 monthly anymore. New address showed cheap apartment in less desirable area of Chicago. Cars repossessed before bankruptcy filing, leases terminated. Everything they'd built on borrowed money and lies, gone. They have nothing, Lawson summarized during our final call. Default judgment will be entered, but collection is impossible. Bankruptcy protection and no assets. I never needed the money, I told her. I needed them to face consequences. They certainly have. This judgment will follow them forever. Late August evening, I sat on my front porch in Columbus. Warm air, cicadas singing, quiet neighborhood street. Everything had settled. Legal battles concluded. Grace and Craig financially destroyed. My assets protected. Inside, I opened an old photo album. Wife's handwriting labeling dates and occasions. Grace at age 8. Birthday party, cake-covered face, pure joy. Grace at 16. High school graduation, proud and bright. Grace at 25, wedding photo with Craig, something already distant in her eyes. I studied the progression, tried to pinpoint when I lost my daughter, before the arrest, before the scheme, before Craig even. Somewhere along the way, the child I'd raised became someone capable of destroying her own father for money. A moment of sadness touched me. I lost my daughter years ago, before any of this. But no regret for my actions. She'd tried to take everything. She deserved every consequence. I closed the album and took out my calculator, doing final accounting. Financial cost to me, approximately $20,000 in attorney fees and consultant costs. Recovery, $87,000 from cottage sale. Net result, $67,000 gain, plus my original assets protected. Emotional cost, a month fighting false charges in Chicago, stress, betrayal, loss of daughter relationship that was already gone. What I gained, justice served. Grace and Craig faced real consequences. My assets secured, purpose fulfilled. I'd shown them actions have results. Their costs, roughly $45,000 spent on attorneys and bankruptcy. Jobs lost, income decimated, reputation destroyed, credit ruined, lifestyle collapsed, everything they valued, gone. My revenge wasn't cruel, just thorough. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a document I'd been preparing for weeks. Last will and testament. Updated, finalized, ready for execution. Read through one final time. I leave my entire estate, including my home and all financial assets, to the Columbus Elder Care Foundation. a charitable organization providing housing assistance, medical care, and legal services to elderly residents in need. Approximate value, $780,000. My house plus retirement savings and investments. It would help dozens of older adults avoid the fate Grace had tried to force on me. I called Mrs. Chen and Tom, asked them to witness the signing. They arrived that afternoon, serious and supportive. Mrs. Chen read through the document, eyes widening. That's very generous, Hiram. Better it helps people who need it than people who destroy others for it. Tom signed as second witness. Grace will find out eventually, when you pass. I hope she does, I said. Maybe she'll learn something, though I doubt it. After they left, I sat alone in the quiet house, looked around at the home I'd defended, the life I'd rebuilt. She'd tried to take everything. Instead, she lost everything. And the people she would have robbed, elderly people like me, vulnerable and alone, would now be helped instead. I stood at the window as evening settled, looking out at my quiet Columbus street. Felt the weight of the past 6 months lift slightly, tired, older, but satisfied. Justice isn't always what the courts give you. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, piece by careful piece, using the same tools they tried to use against you. I'd been an engineer for 40 years, built structures that would stand against any stress. This final project, protecting myself and ensuring consequences, had required the same precision, the same patience, the same understanding of where to apply pressure. Grace had forgotten who taught her to plan ahead, to think strategically, to see moves before they happened. Now she'd remember. For the rest of her life, every time she saw her ruined credit, her lost career, her diminished circumstances, she'd remember. Peace settled over me finally. Not joy, not celebration, just quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. I turned from the window and closed the curtains against the darkness. Tomorrow would come. But tonight, for the first time in months, I would sleep without anger, without fear, without plans for battle. The war was over. I had won. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this